What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and today I'm going to be giving another update on the 100 Movies I've Missed project. This has been a ton of fun for me so far, and I'm really enjoying tracking it, and I hope you guys are too. Like I said earlier, I originally was planning to do this every 25 movies, but now I'm doing it every 10 movies. This is for, I think, 35 to 45. I'm almost halfway done with the project. I'm doing this on Letterboxd as well, so you can follow me on Letterboxd at Filmstocked and follow along on the journey if you want the most up-to-date reviews of each of these movies. I also wanted to mention that Jack over at Fanatic 15 is also doing the 100 Movies I've Missed project. He's actually doing it a little faster than me, so if you want to see some updated content on that, definitely go check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description down below. Alright, so I'll go ahead and get into the movies. First up is Punch Drunk Love, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. So, I have an interesting relationship with this director because I'm not crazy about The Master or There Will Be Blood, so I was really kind of cautiously optimistic going into this movie, but I ended up having a great time. Adam Sandler taking on dramatic roles is something we need to see more of, especially after Uncut Gems and now this movie. I think that he really does have the dramatic acting chops, and Philip Seymour Hoffman has a very nice supporting role in this movie, but what this movie really touches on is the fact that two people can have a relationship despite how weird they are and how odd it may seem on the outside. It just portrays such a genuine romance, and that's what I love about Punch Drunk Love. The next movie on the list is North by Northwest, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and I hate to say that I was slightly disappointed in this movie. Going into this, I'd only seen 3 other Hitchcock films, so I had moderate expectations, but I knew about that iconic scene with Cary Grant and the crop duster playing in the background, but I didn't really know what to expect of this movie, and looking back on it, it's kind of a complex narrative, and I'm not sure if the payoff is there in the end. I do love the final act. There's about 30 minutes of a sequence on Mount Rushmore that's visually stunning, especially for the period of time that this movie came out in. But other than that, I mean, it's not one that I'm going to want to rewatch that much compared to Hitchcock's other films. And I actually watched another Hitchcock film, the next movie, The Birds, another iconic Hitchcock horror movie. He's known as the master of suspense for a reason, and he portrays that here. The first hour of this movie really builds these characters and creates a mystery in this town that they're in. And then the last act is when it kind of just goes berserk, and you kind of care about these characters, so I have to applaud Hitchcock for what he did in the first act. But looking at the movie as a whole, it's not amazing, it's really solid. I think there were some pacing issues in the middle, and overall I would have liked to see more action with the birds and more of a definitive answer onto what happened. But this is a really intriguing story, and it kind of made me want to dig deeper into the behind the scenes aspect. So next up, I watched Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2, both Quentin Tarantino films, and I have a very interesting relationship with Volume 1. I'd tried to watch it 3 times in the past, and each time I got about an hour in and had to turn it off because I was kind of turned off by the violence, and I know that's Tarantino, trust me. I love all of his other movies that I've seen. Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Basterds, Django, Reservoir Dogs, Hateful Eight. I love all those movies. They're great. And he's actually my favorite director. This was just the movie I couldn't get into for some reason, and I'm so glad that I gave it another shot because I understand why Tarantino counts Kill Bill as one long film now, because it truly is. It's this epic that pays homage to the samurai tales of the golden age, like in the 60s and 70s, and it truly is Tarantino's vision enacted. I think Uma Thurman does a phenomenal job portraying this woman who is vengeance-ridden and wants to kill Bill. Overall, they're just a really fun time, and while the first movie focuses more on those over-the-top samurai action set pieces, the second volume really has those Tarantino character moments with phenomenal dialogue, especially between Bill and the bride, and I just love seeing this entire story. I want to sit down and watch them back-to-back one day because what a tale by Tarantino, and I really do enjoy these movies. I'm so glad I gave it another shot. The next movie I watched actually completed my Tarantino filmography, and that is Death Proof. This is definitely my least favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, but it's by no means a bad movie. His dialogue is on point as always. It really progresses the story, and anytime someone speaks, I'm going to listen just because he has that unique flair with his dialogue. I think Kurt Russell does a great job of playing a kind of menacing character, but also kind of a darkly comedic character in a way. And seeing the 2 different groups in the first act and second act, it kind of worked for me, but looking back on it, it felt like 2 long short films put together that just had a recurring character in Kurt Russell. And I think the second act of this movie is significantly stronger than the first. And it's definitely a Tarantino movie that I'm not going to want to go back and rewatch as much, but I'll still probably buy the Blu-ray because he is my favorite director and his dialogue is just on another level. The next movie I watched is V for Vendetta. Now, the character of V himself is probably one of the most iconic characters in all of movies, and the silhouette alone, of course, the mask is iconic. But beyond that, the plot itself, it's really just a story of revenge, and it's kind of ominously relevant to today's world, especially with everything that's going on in society. This could be a sign of the future for all I know, with how the government's handled and everything. It's very scary and ominous, but at the same time, it hits home on a message and idea that the government can be controlling in a way, so you kind of have to look out for yourself in that sense. But Natalie Portman's great in this movie. I think the performances all around are solid, and the Wachowski brothers wrote a really solid, tight script here. I like the final act, I like the final shot of the movie, and overall, I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but I had a fun time with it. Next up, I watched Ghostbusters, the 1984 classic that I somehow hadn't seen. Well, I had seen certain scenes on TV and parts of it on Netflix, but I'd never sat down and watched it from beginning to end, and I'm happy that I did. I didn't love this movie. I think that it was fine. Bill Murray, of course, is iconic, and Dan Aykroyd and Rick Moranis as supporting characters are so funny. But just seeing their chemistry on screen is great, but we didn't get enough of it, in my opinion. I would have liked to see them, busting ghosts more than they actually did. And that's something that I had an issue with in this movie, is the fact that there wasn't really any stakes, the villain wasn't that great, and we didn't get that much of an explanation. And had there been a more compelling villain and plotline, I think this movie could have been better. It's kind of just missing some of the charm of other 80s classics, in my opinion. Following up Ghostbusters, I watched the sequel, Ghostbusters 2, and this one was significantly worse, in my opinion. It was kind of a boring and cheesy rehash of the original one. Slime and a painting are the main villains, so the stakes were even lower. The comedy didn't even work as well as the first movie, and overall, I didn't have that much fun with it. I actually got bored throughout and found myself kind of dozing off. But that being said, it's not an awful movie, it's just not one that I'm going to see myself rewatching for a long time, if ever. The Ghostbusters movies in general, I wasn't crazy about, which is kind of sad to say. I know these are beloved movies and a lot of people think they're great classics, and there's no denying that first one is a classic. They're just not really my cup of tea. And the last movie that I watched for this update is the 2003 comedy directed by Todd Phillips, Old School. This movie stars Luke Wilson, Vince Vaughn, and Will Ferrell, and I really did enjoy this movie. I had a great time with it. I think it's really funny. It's not over-the-top hilarious, but it has a lot of moments where I found myself laughing out loud. Mainly with Will Ferrell, he plays Frank, who's hilarious, and Vince Vaughn's character was really funny as well, but seeing the fraternity and seeing these group of older guys go back and try and form this brotherhood and have a lot of fun, kind of escape back to their old days, a very unique idea for a comedy in my opinion, something I haven't seen in a long time. And it's crazy that Todd Phillips went on to get nominated for Best Director at Joker, and he also directed this comedy that is kind of a classic in a way. "You're my boy, Blue." I love that line. It could easily become one of my favorite comedies down the road. I can see myself rewatching this one with a group of friends pretty frequently. Like I said, while it's not the funniest movie I've ever seen, it's kind of a feel-good comedy, and those are my weaknesses. This movie is very similar to The Internship, which I think has a great story that's kind of feel-good, but it blends the comedy well, and that's how I feel about Old School. They both fall in that same category for me. So that's going to be a wrap for my third update on the 100 Movies I Missed project. I'm almost halfway done. I plan to watch 5 more by the end of June so that I can stay on pace, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely hit that like button and comment your favorite movies that I watched down below, as well as what movies you would be interested to see me watch. I'm tracking this on Letterboxd, like I said, and I kind of have a preset list, but I'd be willing to substitute movies in and out if you guys would want to see a movie. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Having a ton of fun, and I've got a lot of content planned in the future, and thank you so much for the continued support. If you guys are new here, it means so much. Thank you for joining, and definitely just feel free to check out some of my other older content. Thank you all so much. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.